It should still function the same as everything else. I have no idea why it doesn't think our account exists. We never had that issue.
Maybe it doesn't.
So what I can do is take this to Facebook. Somebody did.
Well, I'll just add while you guys are working on that, those ladies with my math adoption committee with the elementary group when they met. So I gave some time for them to share, and as you can tell, it was just so awesome. And then we had several handouts from that website for Science of Math that talked about myths versus truths about different things with math. And it was great for me to learn a lot of things, but just their energy and them giving some really good examples. And then the other teachers, because we had representatives from all the different elementary grade levels and special ed, so they started sharing out what they were seeing, and it was a really good discussion. So I'm excited when we continue, we start narrowing down which curriculum we want. As you can tell, that's gonna be a lot of the push on it. As we said, there's not gonna be a curriculum that is exactly what we want, but if we know what pieces or must-haves, then I think it'll help. So
It's nice to see them so excited about it.
the Greenbush, those cadre groups have just been a game changer. They've been very, very good.
As far as the link goes, I think we've done what we can, trying to put on our profile, because every month you may know that we post that a board meeting is happening. So now we've added a link through my YouTube that is functioning well. So we'll have to figure out what happened there.
Well, let's vote on the consent agenda. Just need a motion to.
Hold on, Susan's leaving.
Oh,
Susan's leaving, and I'll explain that that's because her daughter is
Oh.
on personnel as a recommendation from a counselor at the high school.
So I move we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
okay,
A second.
all in favor, or the discussion, I guess, any discussion, all in favor? Everybody, okay, 6, and Susan is abstaining.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's 402 YouTube.
I think something happened to it.
Gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's just disappeared.
But it happened. One of our.
Oh, all right.
You
So,
never know.
Mr. Ritter, welcome to the circus. Come on up.
What, YouTube terms of service you violated?
I don't know what we did. Yes, that YouTube link is.
Good evening. I have a request here. Hopefully you had a chance to read through it, but I'll read through it and then be able to take any questions that you have about it. I propose canceling classes for Augusta Middle School on Wednesday, March 27th, in order to host the Patriot League Band Festival. Under this proposal, the day will remain a teacher contract day. Teachers will be assigned duties to assist in running a well-organized and efficient event. I understand that canceling a school day is a significant decision, and I assure you that efforts were made to avoid a disruption to the calendar. We explored hosting the contest at an alternate site. We found the space at Robinson too limited. We put together a map and schedule to host both the festival and classes at AMS. The major conflicts with this potential solution are the physical space with 6 additional school bands and really 2 bands per school, so 12 bands, 7th grade and 8th grade for each school, would displace the entire first floor and all of the large spaces throughout the building. Staffing, the contest requires many people to run the event in addition to the band instructors, and lunch contestants eat during the festival in addition to feeding our nearly 450 students. The responsibility to host the Patriot League Band Festival rotates between member schools. Augusta most recently hosted in March of 2019. AMS did not have school on this date to accommodate this event, similar to my request tonight. Augusta Middle School has a strong music program, and this event will highlight our talented students and instructors. AMS has 210 students enrolled in band, 6th through 8th, which is nearly half of our entire enrollments.
Wow.
Yes. Wow.
I did not realize
So,
that.
It's huge.
and just off of that, 90 of our 146 graders are in band, so well over half. And I'm proud to support our music education and the arts, and it's definitely a strength of our school.
Definitely.
So do you all have any questions about this request?
It looks like there are 2.6 days, hours that we can do this without causing too much grief.
Or snow days are concerned, because that's, you know, the natural question. Yeah, if 2.6 days remaining, if we don't have any more snow days, so that essentially means we could do this and still comply with state regulations. If we were to have an influx of snow days or some other scenario that took place, we would likely be adding minutes to the day to make up, so.
Because this is a standard practice. We've done it many,
This
many
is-
times over the years.
It's a standard
Yes.
practice every 5 years, just long enough for people to say, what's this all about?
So
Just
I
need a
move
motion.
we approve Mr. Reuter's request to dismiss classes for the band festival on March 27th.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Everybody, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reuter.
Good luck with the
Good job to you too.
contest.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Christy Thackeray, our preschool coordinator.
So the preschool handbook, was on the consent agenda that you all approved. So just so you know, if you don't approve this, I'll have to go back and I'll go back. You approved it with me hoping that this would go okay. We have looked at preschool fees and, the proposal, really that came from Dale was that we separate, what kids pay for meals with tuition. Because we've gotten so many more at-risk kids over the past several years, and we have lots of at-risk kids who don't meet any free meal qualifiers. Those kids, none of our kids are paying for meals, and so it's putting an unequal burden on families who are paying tuition. So some of that tuition is getting transferred to help pay for meals. So the proposal would be to drop the fee down to $450 a month from $495. And then parents would pay for lunch for their kids if they chose to eat school lunch. Otherwise, they can still send lunch. We have kids who bring lunch anyway because they think it's fun to bring their lunch. So it would kind of balance out. It wouldn't really increase the fee overall for parents who are already paying the fee. Might save some people some money. And it would just make it easier tracking food costs overall. And we are looking to go from instead of providing breakfast and lunch for the kids. Several years ago, we did a 2-part snack in the morning, which was basically cereal and milk or milk and, you know, like some sort of granola bar or whatever. 3 and 4-year-olds don't eat a lot of breakfast in the morning. So what they're getting for breakfast now, the majority of it they're throwing away because they don't want it. So that just seems like a cost that we're spending that we really don't need to. So the district would still provide that 2-part snack and the afternoon snack. Parents would just pay for meals. So this is just, if you guys will approve us separating those.
The way I do that too is that essentially it's kind of a wash, dollars wise from a month perspective, but it shores up our accounting so that these students are treated like every other kid at that point. You put money on your power school account, just like if you're a kindergartner. Makes it easier for our departments to track, and for parents, it's a simple process they would otherwise do.
The parents of preschoolers who are paying tuition still would not pay the enrollment fees at the beginning of the year. We consider that part of the tuition. So those at-risk and special ed students, they would still pay those beginning of the year school fees, just not the monthly fees throughout the year. So that doesn't change.
Okay, I move that we approve the recommendation for the preschool fees as presented.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Everybody? Thank you very much.
You're so good with motion. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. Glad you're up.
All right, so I do have, listed the accountability reports. So if you slide in, you can see the ones over the different years. I won't go, excuse me, in detail, with those, but please let me know if you have questions. We did share them with the principals, at their last meeting and talked about them a little bit. In some areas, we've gone down, and so then we talked about what some of those concerns were. Chronic absenteeism is still an area we really need to work on. Our graduation rate, we still need to look at different things. So a lot of things really tied back to things that at the end of our 5-year KISA review and what we said we wanted to work on this year fits perfectly with that. And then also what we're working on this year as our goals that we're picking out for KISA. So the good thing is we're seeing what our concerns were. We kind of knew about it before the report came out, that these are areas that we want to continue to work in and improve. And so those are things that we'll keep doing. And keep in mind, this is like lag, it's behind a year or so. So, I think we've been doing some really good things over the last year or so. We're not gonna see that report until the following year.
I'm sorry, but can you actually though, kind of explain how to read this report? So
Sure,
I
if you
did
want to
read
look
through it
the most
myself
recent
and
one.
I just, I didn't
Let's
understand
click on
what the
the-
bronze and copper and.
The bottom one that's by itself, that's our district one. So I do have for the last 3 years. The last 2 years was a little different than the oldest one. So the oldest one, the one chart was a circle and they've changed it the last 2 years. So what it'll have there, so that's the demographic. So that's gonna tell us our percent of kids, based on those demographic pieces. So then it's gonna show if there's any, different ethnicities, minorities, that information. Then it's gonna tell about that post-secondary preparedness. So in the areas of math, science, and language arts. And that's pulling from our state scores. So you're gonna be able to see some of that. And you're gonna be able to see that down here.
So the
So the,
35% or 35% efficient or deficient or whatever, or where, I don't have that one in front of me for some reason, but.
what I usually look when I try to look at the overall on these last two. So if we go to the current year one that we can see here. Is that you're gonna be able to see, the success rate and explains it over there that the student needs to meet, the 4 following outcomes, one of the 4 following outcomes. So we track that, so we try to follow where kids have gone after graduation. And so those criteria, now what it doesn't take into account and doesn't get figured in is if they graduate and then they took over their family's farm, or they, go off and do, Job Corps, or those kind of things don't call it. Military will count. If they go into any post-secondary type of school, that will count. But it has to be one of those type of things. Otherwise, so to speak, we kind of get dinged for it, which is too bad because as you know, there are several students that will go in to help follow in the footsteps of a parent or maybe a grandparent, an uncle. They're working for somebody as an employee, shadowing, helping out with their electrical, career masonry. So some of those things don't show up. I do think it'd be neat if we could track that better, so we could say out of those that are counting in, here's what they're doing, because these are some great things, going into construction, really these lost arts that there's gonna be a huge shortage of, going into working, mechanics. Now, if there's any of those that they get a degree in, we'll be able to count that. But sometimes they'll get their training specifically from that organization. and not through a technical
Certified.
school, yeah. And so, those are one of those things that I think it looks different when you have different populations and environments. But what I love is that we are working at trying to have more and more of our students, when they graduate and they walk across that stage of a high school diploma, also having some type of certification, so they can get that certification in welding. They can get some certification in like basic construction, some of those different things, which then they could take on to their family business or being employed with somebody else. And they may not do any more post-secondary beyond that, but they would still have those certifications. Graduation rate is again based on that cohort class. So if they graduated in the year with their classmates. And the effect rate is calculating the combination of those two together. So you can see that some of that has gone down over the last few years, and so we need to work on that going back up. If you slide down more, you're gonna be able to see our graduation did drop from this report from the previous one, which was 91%, so it dropped to 87. Our attendance rate actually went up from 92 to 93. Our chronic absenteeism, which was 25%, which was not good at all, is only 19%. So it's going in the right direction. So there are some things that we're doing better and we need to keep working on those. Dropout was 0.7 and it's changed to the 1.5. So again, this report would have been the 22-23 school year.
I'll point out one other thing on the per pupil rate. You'll notice that the state average is higher than our per pupil rate. And for those of you who've been in budget committees with Dale or I, our finance director, you've heard us talk about the inequity that exists where our district is struggling to compete from an equity standpoint because of different state aid factors and some of those things. So that inequity is causing us to be able to provide a lower dollar.
Is the chronic absenteeism, is that like when people, like, say one person just misses all the time, or like, are we, like, if we require a doctor's note and they literally legit are sick, does that have to go in there to be against us, or does that? Because
That's a good question, how they read that.
It says either way, it says 10% of school days with or without a valid excuse.
Right.
So if they miss more than 10%, they're considered chronic. Yeah.
And back to what Matt, if you go 2 years back, the state aid was 12,800 something, and then what we were getting was 11, so we were only off by 1,000, and then it changed to 2,000, and yeah, as you can see that, just cavern just keeps getting wider and wider, so that is not good. But, and then the backside does show you, how we're doing with state assessments in reading, math, and science, and it does break it down between our groups that are free and reduced lunch students, students with disabilities, African American students, Hispanic students. And so it does break that out on the back as well.
So what do the numbers mean now?
Okay. So the numbers are the levels. If you're looking at the levels here, remember, the level 1 is the lower scoring, and then the highest scoring is a level 4 that you can score on the state assessment. Remember, we shared a little bit that a level 2 would be equivalent to a student getting between a 19 and a 21 on the ACT. So you extrapolate that out to when they can start taking the ACT junior, senior year, that would be very similar. So what we have to keep in mind that's different in Kansas, our state assessment, students scoring 3s and 4s would be, those students probably be qualifying for some scholarship at colleges, where out of the 4 scores, that's the top 2. You go into Louisiana, you go to other states, that's not the case. Their average is more in the 3s, and then their top would be a 4. So I guess what I'm saying in short is we have pretty high standards for our state assessment. And so when we have the majority of our students scoring in the 2s or the top half of the 1, yes, we want to keep moving them, but I think most families would be glad to have their students scoring 20s, 21 on state assessments. Oh, excuse me, it's not state assessments, but on the ACT. And that's what that projection is showing that they would do. So, and we did break down their actual state assessment scores with the principals last month. And we were able to see, you know, areas that we are increasing in, with science was a strong one. And then depending on the buildings where it went up or down with the others. And I can share that with you guys next month too, so you can see how we did. Because this again is delayed by a year, so it does give you that breakdown. So we do look at this. This is always open. Anybody can pull this from KSDE and see that. So you can look at any school, and it's an area that we want to continue to work on, but we want to be strategic and seeing, okay, what's the root cause of some of these things? How can we do a few things really well to move the needle? Obviously, if we don't have students here at school, then it's hard for us to help them. And so I'm working on having them attend school more. That's going to be a big piece. The other piece is now that we have in the lower grades really cleaned up a curriculum, we've agreed on one, we're going to stick with it. We're going to make sure those teachers understand how to teach it. That's going to move things forward as well. We also now have a FastBridge, a universal screener that is pre-K through 12th grade. So we'll stick with that same screener. So we're going to be able to see how students are doing. And we do that 3 times a year. And then for any of our struggling students, they're having that progress monitoring happening every 2 weeks. And so we're going to have a better pulse than waiting once a year to get a report and go, oh, what do we do? We're going to know right away, and we're going to be able to see that projection start moving, which I'm going to be able to share about with you later. So even though this is what we've seen in the past, we've got some good things to share with you. Any other questions on that? Because I know there's a lot of colors, a lot of numbers. Okay. I'm down. As I kind of alluded to with KISA, decreasing chronic absenteeism. The other one that we're going to look at is growth. Not only how our kids are growing and improving in reading, but also in math. And we're going to talk about what we mean by that here in just a little bit. There is where it says current data grasp. I'm going to show you more about those in some slides coming up. But if you want to go back and see all of them together, we can always refer back to that one. I won't go into detail, but our other area that we're focusing on, we spoke about several times, and that is the learning dispositions. And so buildings are at different spots as far as they're collecting data, learning about where kids currently are in their learning positions and what they want to do to help them think about what it means to be a good learner. What do I do when I don't know what to do, right? And you can click on that later. There's an example of a little video that you all put together, ways that they're helping their kids learn about their learning dispositions they want to focus on for the year. State assessments are coming up. We're staying on top of those. We'll have those starting after spring break. The only ones going on right now are CALPA. So the students that are limited English proficiency, they're doing their CALPA tests between now and right before spring break. And then with MTSS, let's go ahead and take a look at where it says student growth toward the end of the year. Yes, thank you. So this is what I'm excited to share with you about. And I think I'll take it to the next one. So when we're going to look at some charts and graphs, like I said, when you're looking at these, it can be a little overwhelming what all the colors mean. So I'm breaking it down for you for this one. Now, keep in mind, we're focusing on this part is growth, meaning from the fall to winter, how much growth did a student do? So when they take the fall, they're saying, okay, here's where they should be currently, and here's where the benchmark is where they should be by the end of the year. But then when it comes winter, they're going to expect them to now hit what a student should have learned from fall to winter. And what does that growth look like? So if you're already behind the basic benchmark to start in the fall, then you've got a lot of catching up, right? You got to get all the way up to what you should know in the fall and then be up to what you should know in the winter. So you're on track. So what I want to be able to show you is we're able to see on every single student where they're currently at and what kind of growth they've made in math and in reading. So the color codes are this way. The red, again, is kind of warning us, hey, they really didn't have any growth. They didn't, at least on this, remember, it's a test on one day, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt, but the kids are trying their best. There wasn't any growth. Moderate growth is, they have some growth. Their gap isn't getting wider, but it definitely is not shrinking. Like, we still need to stay the course and help figure out how to close that gap because it is not improving. Typical growth, the purple is saying that is what a student should learn during that time span. They're right on track. They're doing well. They're going to be closing that gap if they were behind, because now they're doing well. And aggressive growth, man, these kids are working super hard. They are catching up. And that's, you're gonna see that often in kids that are behind, but it could be in those that are right on track that, man, they're just loving what they're doing and having great instruction, so they're just soaring. So they're going to meet benchmarks quicker than other students. So aggressive growth is very exciting, but if we have students in the typical aggressive growth, we should stay the course with what we're doing with that instruction because it's good, it's working. We have flat, we may want to go, what's going on? Because we're not having growth and we don't want to continue that path months down the road. But click on the next. So here is for our reading. So the first one is, you can see, covered up by the thing a little bit. That is our early reading. So these are our kindergarten, first, and grade students. And I did double check, it does not include preschool, even though we are now starting to bring preschool. So this is just for our kindergarten and first grade students. So learning those basic sounds, all of those basic things they need to know for reading. Look how many of our students are in the typical or aggressive growth. That is good. Now, are there some not making movement? Yes. The great thing is the teachers they have where they can see each individual student. So it may be that a student's not making a lot of growth and they'll see it on their chart. We just left out individual students. It may be that they were already at the benchmark. Maybe they started the year already at the winter benchmark at the end of the year, so they may not show a lot of growth. It may look flat. But at the same time, what we had talked about is the principal team and stuff is we want every student. We don't care if you're already, above average in learning the different standards of the benchmarks or you're needing to catch up. We want everyone to be making adequate growth. That way there's no one bored, there's no one just sitting there not learning. And so that's why our district really wants to make this the goal. Growth for all kids, because we want to stretch all of our kids and have learning happen. Again, A reading, that's 2nd through 12th grade. That's what we want to see. Because it's hard to get that aggressive growth. It is, because that means they're doing more than what they should be doing in that span of time. Okay, and we go ahead and flip to the next one. Here's math. Early math, again, kindergarten through 1st grade. And then 2nd through 12th grade. And again, the nice thing is the teachers can drill down on this more. And then any student that is a tier 2 or tier 3, they're also doing that progress monitoring every 2 weeks. So they're going to be able to see what is it they're not getting. They can pivot and adjust then to help. Again, if they're making growth, And that's what I like about the aggressive growth. Would make so happy as a parent, come to conference, they're gonna show you your students still at high risk, right? That's tough to hear, because you want them doing better. But if I could also tell you, yeah, your students at high risk, but their growth is aggressive, and here's where fast bridge plotting them to be at the end of the year. They're gonna be all the way over here. If they stay the course, if they keep working as hard as they have from the fall to winter, here's where they're gonna be. Now, does that always mean they're gonna be out of tier support? No, it may take into a second year. For some students with lots of needs, it may take 2 years before we get them back to grade level. But the fact that a parent and a student can see that they're working hard, that's awesome. And we didn't have some of that before. So to me, these are things to be excited about, that our teachers and students are learning, and we want to make sure a parent-teacher conference that we're able to tell them about that. Unfortunately, the family report doesn't show the growth, but the teachers, definitely at the elementary level, have all been, we watched the video, we broke it down, we looked at it, they all know where to find this for each individual student. So they can put little stars, they can make little comments at the conferences to let parents know. And we talked about that, how especially the kids that are in a tier 2 or tier 3, you gotta let them know when they're making typical or aggressive growth, because that's good stuff. Again, same thing, no matter what tier they're at, we are wanting to, the growth shows how much improvement they've made. How much improvement they've made. And then this tier again is just reminding you, we want 80% or so of our students to get everything they need in the instruction that happens during core time. But if they're struggling, in fact, we're showing they're behind, whether it's in reading or math, then we're gonna get them in some tier 2. Okay, some pull out or off to the side, some small group when they're doing some differentiated instruction. If they're tier 3, that's when they're gonna get that up to an hour a day, small group, 1 teacher to 1 to 3, 4 students support. Right. Now this one has to do with how they're doing. And so what we want to look here, then this would be more like what you would see with like state assessments, right? This is showing where our students are at. And so in the first one, you were the early reading. If they're in the purple color, that means low risk. And what that just means is they're on track. We can't say they're at target, because if they were at target, that means they've already learned the concepts they're supposed to know at the end of the year. Does it make sense? So you're not gonna see any on target at all at the beginning with the early kids. They're still learning reading. Do we have some numbers we need to work on? Yes. So some areas we've seen go up in the winter where we would not want those to go up. We would want those to go down in the red area. So that's where teachers have to go back and look, okay, what do we need to do differently? Or do we need to spend more time? Do we need to cover a few more things during tier 1, not just when we do tier 2 and 3 instruction? The other part then is 2nd through 12th grade. So you can see how they're doing. Pretty similar, not a lot of movement there. I know those are some things I'm gonna be visiting with secondary MTSS about what does our intervention look like and other things we can do to keep improving that and providing support we need. But the nice thing is we now have some students on target, where we didn't have that before. That means they've already met the standard that even expected to know at this point in time in the year. Okay, we'll go ahead and click on the next one. And then this is gonna be the same thing for the math. Early math, we're doing some good stuff there. Doing very well. And then math in the upper grades, again, we've got some kids on target. They already know the concepts that they're supposed to know by the end of the year, and we're only mid-year. And again, this is just pretty much saying students fall into different tiers, so we need to make sure that we're helping every student stay the course. And that's where the teachers can break this down and look at individually. get in some times with PLCs, and that's why, you know, we keep pushing, especially at the elementary, to have some of the PLC time, so they can have these discussions, look at the data, see who the groups of kids are, okay, but these all kids happen to be in the same group, are we doing the same intervention with them, do we need to pivot or change anything, or the kids in that group, are they making aggressive growth? So they may be bright pink, but if they're making aggressive growth, we don't want to touch it because they're doing well. They're going to eventually roll over into the sunrise. They're getting there. So again, we need to celebrate the hard work the teachers and the students are putting in because we are seeing some really good growth. Also stay the course to make sure kids understand where they're at, where they're going, how they're gonna get there. And actually, our PD on Monday is really gonna give teachers some time. They're gonna get some group and work time to talk about that. How do you know? How do you know on a day-to-day basis, are you letting kids know, here's what we're learning, here's why we're learning it, here's how you're gonna know if you've mastered it, here's what an excellent example looks like. So those are some things we're gonna help continue to work with the teachers because our kids need to be part of this process even more. They enjoy seeing the graphs. They enjoy seeing themselves shoot up and make progress. So we need to make sure we're communicating that. And then the last thing, just like we've learned, explicit and structured instruction is very important. Reading, you just heard from the teachers say it's also important in math. And so we need to be, as we're looking at math curriculum, making sure we're focusing on those things. Any questions? That was a lot.
Good information.
The other pieces, under MTSS, you can click on, it just has some links to, there's a really nice website, so a QR code we'll have available at conferences for parents in different classrooms and put them up, you know, by the office area as well. They click on that, it takes them to Fastbridge site. It's a special site just for parents. And so on the left-hand side, it breaks out math and reading, goes into a lot of detail about reading, even dyslexia, and also talking about if a student is scoring in a risk, high risk or some risk, you know, that they met some of those indicators possibly for dyslexia, but just to keep an eye on that and to be working with the teachers on that, because if, you know, the next time they have their progress monitoring or the next window of screening, if they're still staying in that area, then we need to, you know, consider what type of things are we doing, what accommodations, supports are we providing? Would there be outside supports that needed, those kind of things. And
At conferences, are teachers explaining to parents how to read the reports? Like, I got the reports, but I was struggling to interpret it.
the family report,
Yes, I mean, do they get the family report at conferences and then are they shown how to read it, explained how to read it and what to look for?
as
Like,
far as
one of our goals was communicating with stakeholders, so I just want to make sure that we are using this new Fastbridge to communicate with stakeholders.
they all will have it, so the math teachers will share with the math, the ELA will share with the ELA. So not all teachers are sharing that, it's mainly those that are teaching either math or ELA, or at the elementary, obviously, doing both. Remember, this is the first year for the lower grades, so the teachers, while they're explaining it, they don't feel as confident as they would like to be on it, and we told them, we understand, this is your first year, you're gonna get better at it, but by sharing this with them, I think that helps a lot as well, because it's pretty user-friendly, website, but we have been talking to them about it, and also by me meeting with them in PLCs and going over that growth, that really helped them, I think, too, because that's what they really wanted to be able to tell the parents about is, yes, they may still be in high risk or some risk, or they're on target, and so then here's what kind of growth is looking like for your student. And so while some are probably more confident than others, those are areas we're going to keep working on and providing them more support.
But every parent that comes to a conference gets a family
Should get a
report.
family report, yes,
And
from
from
their
the high
building.
school.
Yep.
And, okay, all the grades.
That's if they're enrolled in a math or English. class.
Yes, they would have to be, so if they're not taking a math or English class with us, then they would not.
And they'll see a report that shows where their students at, or what their growth is. They don't-
Yes, so there's one of those that shows an example of what a parent,
The family performance.
yeah, and you scroll down. Yep, right there is the example. So this was given to all the parents in the fall, but obviously we may need to get it in the spring. But this marks out each section and it gives a description for it, it explains what it means. The teachers have gone over that, so while the teachers may not be able to go in a lot more detail than this, they'll be able to explain this, and the parents get to take this with them. So they have this report that breaks out. And again, it doesn't have the growth part, but it will show like if they're high risk, some risk, or on track.
Okay.
And then it'll also show the part below, you can see it shows percentile. That's if parents want to see, well, how's my kid compared to every other kid across the nation that also takes FastBridge, which FastBridge is a huge assessment tool, so it does give them a pretty good idea. But we want to remind them that's not as much of focus as are they hitting those standards?
So if a child is, say, high risk, then it shows up on their family report. What would a parent do? Like, so the teacher will go over it with them. And
They would also, at that time, share with them, and the parents should have already gotten a letter saying that they're in tier 3 support. So once at the beginning of the fall, once we knew what students were gonna be in tier 3 or 2 support, then the parents of those students got a letter saying, based on the FastBridge, your child is showing some need, we're putting them in this intervention for support. Now, the teacher may be sharing them at conference that they're no longer in the tier 2 support, but they've made it out. Possibly even made it out of tier 3, maybe they had a bad test day, and so we quickly found out when we were putting them in tier support is, they know these, they're going, they're just flying through them, and so we're gonna exit them out. Just remember, it's about what I need now. So once the student masters those concepts, then we want to get them out, leave room for those students that may need it, but also make sure we're continuing to grow those little brains and have them in the correct area during that tier time.
But the teacher should be communicating this all along.
Yes.
So from the very beginning, when they very first get tested.
Because they all get a letter saying that they're in tier support. And so
the letter goes home in a packet, or it goes home in an email, or.
I will check with the principals. I'm not sure how they did it, if it was through an email or if it was in like their little, at the elementary, like in their little folders. But they do get notice that's actually built in with the FastBridge, and they were doing it before Dibble. So this isn't something new. They were doing it before when they had Dibble, so. But yes, they communicate to the parents if they're in tier 3 for sure, sometimes 2. It looks a little different in 2 at middle school and high school because they may just do some things within the class when they go into small, may not be pulling them where they're separate from their peers to get this intervention. But they do if they're tier 3, even at the upper grades. And then just the other piece on down is that the letters training, we have 12 teachers that want to do letters training. We may have a couple more. They still have a little bit more time to make a decision. And we also may be hosting as an overflow area. They're having it circled, but they may have so many that they need another location. So we may tag team with them and host. As I said before, it's coming Monday. We're going to have our visible learning that's gonna be all about how does the teacher help not only them know how to break things down and keep to the basics, but also communicate that with the students so they know where they're at, where they're going. How will they know when they master that concept? So no more mystery tests. We want them to know where they're going and what does this look like. We did finish training, Shayla and Brad and I, and pretty exciting. In fact, I saw Brad today at the high school. He was so excited. He said, Shayla and I have been talking, we've been trying this in our rooms, and we just can't believe, the difference it's making helping the kids see, hey, here's where you're at, here's where I need you to be, here's what it looks like when you and I both know you've done the work at this level. So whether it's a complete sentence, whether it's math skills, whether it's a paragraph you're writing, whatever it happens to be, being able to show what that looks like. Reading Horizons, so we've had training over the last couple of days. That was very empowering for the teachers. And then a few of them want some additional training, so we're setting that up. And we are gonna be able to host the Reading Academy and we have a few teachers at the lower grades that want to do that training. And so then they'll actually be trained, not only to train the rest of our teachers in Reading Horizons, which is that Orton Gillingham curriculum. It also means that they get like a direct line to all the gurus at the company. So if there's ever any changes or adjustments, they'll be able to communicate that out to us, rather than us wait to have a trainer come to us. They usually fly in from, Texas or Salt Lake City or somewhere far away. So we have people on site. So, and we've got some good ones signed up. So we'll get more information to you about that when we get started with that training. Capturing Kids' Hearts this month will be having their traction building visit. So that's when Capturing Kids' Heart representatives and their coaches come to the buildings, get to visit with the students and the teachers and see how things are going. Celebrate the great things they're doing, but also give them some suggestions on where they can keep growing and improving. And, remember, Capturing Kids' Hearts, not only the social emotional, it's also that whole structure about having good classroom management, hallway, common area management, and also discipline. So, like 4 questions. So a lot of the teachers have the little 4 questions if a student is not making good choices that they could ask them to help the kid figure out how to redirect themselves, instead of just telling them, stop that, don't do that. It's more of an open-ended, what are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing? What could you be doing? All right, and help them get redirected. And then that's just the highlight of PD at the glance for this month. So we have a lot going on this month. And then the lens, Mr. Ward's already spoke about in the past, but that's where we're starting to track all these teachers that are kind of our experts, which you got to hear 2 of them today with them at. That's just an overall of all the things of visible learning. The area we're just focusing in is the top, the left. Yes, your top left, and then also the top right. So the learning dispositions for the kids, helping them learn what does it mean to be a good learner. And then the other side, how do the teachers help make what they're teaching clear to the students so they know, hey, why am I sitting in here doing this? How am I going to use this? How do I know if I've learned it?
I don't think it'll be hard because it should be empowering. But would you get us a definition of what chronic absenteeism? And would you get us a report from each building, how many students they have that are chronically absent and how they're addressing it, please?
Yes, I can do that. Actually, all the buildings will know because they have an alert now. That's not one of those new alerts we added. And I know for the tier 3, it's any student that's getting that letter, that 357 absenteeism. So we did mark all those kids, if they're getting a truancy letter for the 357, that rule that all school districts follow.
So once again, how many kids have been filed truant?
Those are only kids that are unexcused, correct?
You're right, which would not factor into this, because you're right, if they were out for surgery for a week or got COVID or, different things, they would be getting the truancy letter because we'll honor those doctor notes. But you're right, it doesn't figure in that.
And I'm not so much concerned about those that have legitimate absences, but I am concerned about those that are cutting school.
Okay,
I think it's a
more
big
comfortable.
problem, you know.
I will be glad to work on that.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Okay. District calendar update.
Okay, district calendar update. Had to keep you informed best I can through Friday notes, but essentially the district calendar committee met and came up with a calendar option. However, at that meeting, it was recommended that the district consider ways to find more time for elementary teachers. And that shouldn't be new language for the board, because I think we've talked about it for a couple of years. There has been requests and comments about, maybe we should consider a late start and an early release for a few years now. None of Dr. Dowd's come from a district that has had that opportunity. But I wanted to, I'm not an early adopter on that concept. And visited with principals, and principals really worked to try to build their collaborative time into their schedule, which was really difficult and not as effective as they'd like for it to be, because oftentimes they can't be in the collaborative meeting with the teachers, which makes that really difficult for them to provide leadership in. And time windows are really short and frantic. And so we essentially got together a subcommittee of elementary teachers, and essentially it was simple questions to start. Is more collaborative time needed at the elementary level? And that was easily agreed upon, yes. Then we started talking about options and opportunities. And late start and early release we're definitely going to be a part of that conversation. We knew that coming in. So that's why we were intentional about making sure that AEA was represented in that subcommittee, so that any conversations we had that sort of orbited around the negotiated agreement, that we were transparent with the teachers union the whole way through as we talked through topics that might impact the negotiated agreement. So that was a transparency effort there to include AEA. So we had AEA's co-president, not at the elementary level, but the rest of the staff that were there were all elementary staff. It was our elementary principals, elementary teachers. And I think at the bottom of the memo, I provided you the names of who those people were. So as we kind of discussed possibilities, we bounced around for a while for the purpose of making this conversation shorter. Essentially, that group arrived at the concept of early release on Fridays. That was the concept. So the recommendation that came out of that committee was for us to consider early release on Friday. Time-wise, what time would that be? Essentially, they were thinking 1:30 to 1:45 time frame, dismiss kids, get them on the buses and load it up, and then that way they would have adequate time for collaboration at the building level. They preferred early release to late start, because I think the feeling with late start was that it can feel like the pending avalanche of kids arriving, just waiting, I've got to get, this ready for class, that ready for class, versus the early release allows them to kind of, okay, we're done with the student obligations for that day. And now let's talk about PLC topics. We asked them what topics they thought were important. I mean, really, their topics were probably similar to what our administration thought. I mean, it's all good collaborative conversations. So as far as what makes sense for staff, I kind of think that it's a really easy conversation to have from the staff perspective, that doing something like this makes a lot of sense for teachers to be able to have the conversations they need to have around student improvement, around MTSS, about scope and sequence, just a variety of other things that they brought up. The part where it gets tricky is how does this impact families? And that's really the reason I have not been an early adopter on this conversation in the last couple of years. But the message continues to come from our elementary teachers that they don't have enough time. And I feel like we need to listen to what they're saying. Does this place a burden on parents? Yes, it does. These are their children, right? We have to remember that. So they do have that responsibility, but that's easier said than done when it comes to logistics of the day-to-day.
I really think with COVID, there's so many more parents who are working split schedules and working from home, and this is gonna be, I think, less of a burden than it was when we were doing it years ago.
A lot of the companies that are now making everybody return back to work
I mean.
Well, I don't wanna argue with you, but
Well,
coming
all of a
from
sudden there's been-
what we're hearing, now we've got a lot of big buildings in downtowns that are going empty and vacant because they've found out how much cheaper it is to keep their people at home. So now they're asking us if we think it would be a good idea to turn them into apartment complexes. Cause they're not using them anymore, but anyway, I just think there's a lot more parents working from home now than there used to be.
For me, there's an inequity between the middle school, high school schedule that has this time built in, reliable, protected, allows collaborative time. The elementary schedule doesn't. We've tried to work around it, principals have tried to be creative, and it hasn't worked. So then we surveyed other school districts, so you've got a list of names of those school districts that, you know, you only get the responses from those who apply, but I thought 66 districts was a pretty good response, because if you don't have late start, you're not gonna apply. Right, so you can mark them out, and then the other ones, you know, may or may not have applied, but 66 I thought was pretty good, so. You always wish you asked different questions after you get the responses, because it makes you ask more questions, but I wasn't sure for whatever reason in my head, I thought early release, I thought late start was gonna be more consistent with what districts did. It turned out for those people who responded that most of them were actually on early release model.
Late start is hard for your kids to get themselves to school if you're not there.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to get the kids home than make sure they wake up and get up and get to school on their own with no parents.
Something that jumped off the paper to me was the Friday versus,
Yeah.
I'm hearing Friday from more people.
Yeah.
But most districts are Wednesday, which would make a lot more sense to me.
So so Daryl, I'm gonna come back, circle back to that. The time frame, does your district provide childcare? 90% no. Does your community provide childcare? Yes and no, kind of depending on the community, it seems like. Frequency, is it weekly or monthly? Our staff recommended weekly. They thought that was easier for people to remember and not having to track that one day a month where they might lose track of it. And they also like the idea of how much time that would allow them to collaborate. But yeah, so Daryl, question 6 was what day of the week? I think that Wednesday is the most selected day by districts. Friday's the second, which surprised me a little bit, because for whatever reason, I thought it might be Monday, because so many Mondays were already impacted by a holiday or a PDA day or whatever. But Wednesdays, my understanding there is that they're not interrupted as much by those examples. So like Wednesday, you have Wednesday school every week, unless it's Thanksgiving or spring break. So from the consistency perspective, you get more Wednesdays in a year than you do Fridays or Mondays. I think we came up with 29 Fridays in a calendar year, and 27 Mondays. So when they looked at that, they preferred Friday. There's also a survey here, another survey from the teachers that I printed out for you, and they again voted in favor of Friday.
I liked Friday just because, I mean, if you're gonna go out of town for a long weekend, grab your kid a little bit early, then leave and go do whatever. Like from a parent perspective, I liked Friday better, and a lot of people only work half days on Friday, or, I mean, if you're gonna have a day off. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I just thought it was more convenient from a parent
I would
standpoint.
bet if we took
Parent survey?
a survey, or if we just took a poll to look and see how many people pull their kids out anyway on Friday early compared to how many pull them out on Wednesday early.
Yeah.
No, none, you know, they're gonna leave early for the weekend, like you said.
And so might our teaching staff is my concern.
Well, yeah, I
Well,
get that too, but they
I
have professional responsibility.
That's right.
Surely they'll
I
accept
respect that.
that. I think they will. I think they want time to collaborate. I think they'll use it wisely. I believe them.
I do, I just think collaborative time can be maximized when you can continue your collaboration on the next day.
Oh, you mean that, so have it during the middle of the week?
Friday meetings don't usually carry over
I was
into
gonna-
Saturday.
I don't, and I also don't feel like the teachers would necessarily not be present, but sometimes let's face it, on Friday, your mind
You're
is
spent.
already going, you're already headed out the door.
But I think we also have to look at what's best for the parents, and I think Friday would be, I mean,
I think they felt like.
and the teachers wanted Friday.
How far off are we from the parents?
Well, so I wanted to visit with you all first. We've had internal conversations, but before parents come see you in the grocery store, I wanted to have this conversation.
And you're talking every week.
Yeah,
How many
everybody.
days of school we're gonna have to add?
The recommendation was every Friday that you have school on Friday.
It's still gonna be several days of school we're gonna have
Do
to
you
add.
know how many times we
No.
had parents forget that it was that Friday or that Monday or that
It
Wednesday?
just does seem extreme to have it, because I know my kids, they had
Yeah, we did
early
too.
release for a while, and they had early.
We had
start,
early release and late
start.
start. Yeah,
But- And it was once a month, and I'm sure that does happen, but it does seem extreme.
I can remember pulling into town at 3 o'clock thinking I had 15 minutes and seeing kids downtown. So I forgot it was that Friday. My kids are somewhere waiting for me.
From the minutes perspective, it basically brings them down to the 4 days. So it would bring them right to the dot on having to build in 4 snow days.
So we lose our snow.
No, they would still maintain it, because elementary has more minutes than any other level.
So we
Because
wouldn't
they-
They
think
go
it's
to 3 to 3 to, I mean, they go to 3 to.
Yeah, so we wouldn't lose anything.
And
I'm anxious to see it open.
from the minutes perspective, they also get half, because it's PD.
They do
get
get half for half.
Minutes, so. So, the last question on there was what grade levels? So most districts, if they do it district wide.
Yeah.
But because we already have the ability to have collaborative time in the middle school, and high school, that hasn't been a concern for us locally.
So we would only be wanting to do it for just elementary.
The conversation has been all around elementary. You can see that this next survey was from the teachers union. They sent this survey out. And I preferred that because one of the questions on here is, what do you want to do during those times? And I think right now, it's important to know what do the teachers need? What do they value? And so I didn't want them to think that the district was trying to put them into a kind of corner of what we thought they should do during that time. I wanted the teachers union to kind of figure out what do the teachers think they need during that.
This is from the association.
So this one was sent out by the Teachers Association. You'll see that the bar on the second question, again, 77% would prefer early release on Friday. So the reason that this is relevant is because that subcommittee was represented 15 people or whatever number that is. And this was sent out to the entire elementary staff. And that doesn't mean that all of them applied. For those who did, there was still quite a few who picked Friday outside of that subcommittee. They went through and talked about what some of the topics were. These topics were provided by AEA. I didn't give these topic ideas. A lot of these came from the subcommittee's meeting and the thoughts they had. We put all those down on notes, but GEI meetings, data discussions, MTSS, fast bridge data, state assessment conversations, curriculum textbook conversations, crisis committee meetings, building level collaboration. That's something that they really want more of, is building level and grade level across building collaboration, scope and sequence conversations, those kind of things. District level collaboration. So, I think if you're thinking administratively, I don't think there's that different a perception of what would be beneficial to staff and students during that time. And then you get into some of the comments, and I won't go through all that, but there's some pretty good feedback there. One of the questions that they asked, and there's a pie chart here, is if this were to happen, and this is why we want AEA represented in this conversation, is if this were to happen on Fridays, you would go below the required plan time on Friday to make the schedule work. Now, the trade-off is you then get that collaborative time back, but it's not planning. You can't make the argument that it's a version of planning time, because it's not. So they would lose 10 minutes of plan time. So then the union asked The contract says that you shall have at least 50 minutes of consecutive planning staff. We move to this, it would essentially bring it down to 40 minutes. Are you in favor of that, knowing that you would lose 10 minutes of traditional plan time, and 77% say yes?
And that's every Friday, right?
Right.
77% said yes, and the rest of them said no, even though they're gonna get the next hour and a
77%.
half to, okay.
10% said no. And then there's a chart on here, Carrie, if you see it, but I'm okay with this as long as, so there were just different responses that were one-offs. But for the most part, like, is it ratifiable? Probably.
Yeah, but it would need to be addressed in negotiations,
It would
Yeah,
have,
because we
definitely.
can't agree to violate the contract.
No.
no, yeah, so this would be a lead-in to negotiations, but you don't want to go down a path that's a dead end. You know, you'd rather know now, and it does not appear to be a dead end from the perspective.
So we're doing it only for elementary, or are we doing it
We're-
district-wide?
We're thinking about it.
The conversation right now is only around elementary.
Seems to me that's best anyway right now. I mean, they have more time for that.
It'd be a good place
And
to
I
start.
will just say, the kids run havoc on town when they get out early.
The older kids.
They do, that's probably the older kids.
Yeah,
Well, I think the middle school had some issues with that, so.
yeah, that's why we kept doing it.
Speak to that, yeah, Doug remembers that well.
Yes.
Anyways, I want you to know where I'm at with this. I am supportive of the voice that I'm hearing from the teachers. I know that the parents' voices on this topic might not be as supportive of the topic. But I do want to support our teachers, and I'm very concerned about burnout, and there's only so many things we can do about that. And I think there's societal pressures that come into play that make that whole conversation more challenging. But if there's something we can do and we can figure out a solution, I'm really interested in trying to find that option. So I wanted you to know that, and I also want you to know that I'd like to survey the parents on this topic, but I didn't want to do that before we visit.
I think
two
that's a good
comments.
idea.
I really appreciated the teachers' comments, because a lot of them really, I mean, when you read these, I mean, they really thought it through, and for the most part, all of them are really positive and really, I mean, really great comments. And so I really appreciate the teachers and their responses on the survey. And then the second thing I would say, I'm in support of it, but I would like to see us, I saw not very many provided after school care. I would like to see us still providing latchkey to start, that latchkey option, because they're already in latchkey.
Yeah.
Starting it early and trying
So-
to make sure we're able to figure that out.
That is something that we discussed, and so we don't call it latchkey, but it's our
Whatever
after-school
it's called, yeah.
program, same concept, right? And so we have limited students who are there. I think we've got like 70 kids in there, which anything bigger than that's probably too much.
Right.
So we're not gonna be able to expand that. But the problem there is who staffs it. And so the conversations we have had with those teachers in that subcommittee was to have our paraprofessionals maintain the hours worked and not lose hours over this. And then to be able to go over there. The complication there is, but we also want our paras to be involved in some of this collaborative time. So what we loosely talked about was a rotation where the paras could go over to E-Wall. And so that's the part that's kind of funky. But paras could go over to E-Wall to bridge that gap to the after-school kids from the high school. So at 315, that program is largely staffed, not entirely, largely staffed by high school kids. So you've got to bridge that gap from like 1:30 to 3:15. That maintains para hours. That's one option. The other thing we've talked about is the possibility of rec commission. So I haven't gone there yet. But say the rec commission charges a nominal fee of maybe $5 a week. I don't even know if that makes sense, but it's a way maybe for them to generate some revenue and get some people over to the rec. I don't know if they're interested in that. They don't have a director yet. Those are some conversations that we loosely talked about, but we don't want it to be reliant on that. I think what would happen is if the board were to approve this concept, even if we didn't have after-school care outside of you all taken care of, the community's gonna start figuring that out.
I agree.
And they
I
could
like
be-
that you're so creative about the rec and pulling that in. I appreciate you,
Doug and
man.
I had a conversation about that one
I like
time.
it.
So
where-
would you bus them there?
Potentially, I've talked to transportation, and basically they're like, well, the earlier the better. I haven't talked to them about the rec. I talked to them about, can you manage the early release and then come back and pick up middle school, and high school? They said the closer it is to 1:30, so like 1:35 gets them minutes, the required minutes. So if we did like a 1:35 release, transportation's like basically saying, we might have to pick up school. We think we can do it. I'll just paraphrase.
So they'd be running double routes that day.
So, yeah, they would run elementary routes and then they'd come back middle school, high school routes.
So, hold on, so when they run the whole route, like they take all the elementary kids home? Or just go pick everybody up and then come back and pick up the middle school and high school?
I
They'd be
I think
taking
they
everybody
take
home,
them home.
yeah, okay,
But-
so it's a total double route.
So then you've got some Friday games and away events and taking people, so, they're kind of processing that right now too.
Yeah,
Where,
Friday's a big game day, lots of bus trips.
Mhm.
yeah. I know you don't like the once a month, but would it not almost be better to have 2 hours once a month? So they were actually, I mean, by the time you get the kids out, do they have time in that? Oh, one person has.
If we go any earlier than 1:30, we're cutting into lunch.
No, but I'm just saying, if you didn't do it
And-
every week, if it was once a month and it's a 2 hour.
Yeah, but if you go, you said two,
Oh.
see, if we let out any earlier than 1:30, then we're just gonna really get into a lot.
Well, the lunch schedule could be adjusted perhaps, I don't know.
So.
I know how secondary schedules work, I don't know exactly
Yeah.
how elementary schedules work, but I
A
could
lot of
adjust
kids
lunch
running
schedule
through one
at
lunch,
the high school if I needed to.
yeah.
And the rec center conversation that I shared with Matt was about a district that did late start. So parents dropped the kids off at the rec,
And then. we
and then
pick
the
them up.
buses took them out to their individual schools.
Mhm.
So then it was in the morning rather than in the afternoon.
I think it depends on the perspective. From the transportation perspective of just getting kids to school, logistically, that late start works. Because then you don't have to figure out covering after school care and all that kind of stuff.
You won't be pulling secondary kids out of school to babysit.
But we've heard, and a lot of the people on the committee are parents of younger children, and they just felt like maybe they didn't think, maybe that was harder on families to do a late start than to do an early pickup, because their thought was, the day's pretty much over, you just go pick them up and move on.
I think you will get more out of the children by having the early dismissal, because if they stay on their routine, it's so important for little kids, about forever, for them to get up every morning and still go to that school while they're fresh to do it, versus coming in, they're all wound up, their morning routine has been messed up. I think you get a lot more out of the children to have the early dismissal.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. One of the things the teachers also said was that pride and learning time
Yeah.
for kids that age is in the morning.
Yeah.
Where, you can get a third grader and they're ready to roll at 8 o'clock. So they wanted to capitalize on prime
I
learning.
just think,
Middle school, high school, maybe not so much.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the early dismissal better than late start.
I do too, and I know Rose Hill does early or late start.
I didn't think they did it every week.
They don't do it every week.
Douglas does late start every Friday.
And Circle does late
So
start every Wednesday, I think, or
I think-
early
I
release
think
every Wednesday.
They're doing something like that. I think they're trying to figure out how to do it with the kids being dropped off. And I don't know if it's like optional to drop off kids, whatever, but that model seems to be more difficult to
Chaotic.
sustain. So,
Okay.
I think we can figure it, I mean, Leon has been doing 4-day weeks and that community really embraced it. I'm not saying we
The
do
teachers
that,
are also off on that.
but I'm saying,
Right?
yes, they are. But, you know, the parents aren't, you know, the parents had to work through all of it, and they have really embraced it. I mean, they,
Why do teachers here ask me that? Why can't we do it here?
yeah, they have really, they like it over
Well,
there.
my last year of teaching was in a 4-day school week, and honestly, when we changed, it was a little rough at the beginning, but it provided a Friday job for a lot of high school kids to babysit
Yeah.
for those little ones, and parents, now you couldn't pay those people enough to change, and they've got it worked into their schedule. The only bad thing I've heard about them was and I don't know about them, is they do Fridays off, but they've talked about switching it because so many doctors started taking off Fridays, and originally that was the hope, was appointments could be maintained. But it did provide a lot of jobs for some high school, you know, kids to babysit. So I think parents will make it
I
work.
think we can figure it out, if that's what they're
I
doing.
think it's worth exploring a little.
Yeah, yeah.
What, so I'll go ahead and get a parent survey out. Are there any specific questions you would like asked from the perspective of a board member hearing from parents?
I just think it's gonna be hard. I think it's gonna be hard for parents to understand the survey because they don't necessarily have the perspective of the teachers. So I don't know how you're going to, you know, I think if you're gonna send out a survey, there needs to be some sort of context with it, like, these are the things, this is why it's only elementary, this is, you know, like, I think parents are willing to, but they need to be informed, they need to understand the whys. So I don't know if you have like make like a little Canva that you do before, and maybe get it out on social media that the survey is coming, and maybe what the reasons are, maybe preface it a little bit so that it's more, you know.
And maybe
And
add,
maybe
you know, a
there's
little
some-
bit of this information, not, I mean, just that the teachers are wanting this.
Just maybe give them a little bit of time to process it before we just send out a survey.
Right in.
You know what I mean? Like,
I
it's
do.
kind of like the rec, you know, you really built that up, like, I don't know,
Well, I don't wanna,
wait too long.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
No,
ideally, we
yeah.
wanna try to get that calendar going.
I think they'll be more receptive to it than we might think.
We have conference, there's a couple days.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
What was that?
we'll give out information at conferences.
You're just gonna need to hurry, Matt.
Gonna have to-
No pressure.
Tell them it's coming at
No
least.
pressure.
So you don't want the survey to go, you don't want there to just be a lead-in conversation, then here's the survey. You want-
I think it's
You can
fine.
do
I
that,
just,
but we just wanna make sure they.
I know
what
you're
it's
like-
for.
your little Canva visuals might get a little more attention than just like
Okay.
the
Yeah.
blurb at the beginning of a Google form.
Right, and if somebody wants, if they are interested, then maybe there's a link to look, you know, to look at the survey.
Yeah.
I mean,
So maybe
a
try
lot
to
of people.
break down some.
Yeah, why would it?
That's just my thought, like it might be a little more receptive.
Any specific questions that as a board member you want me to ask, or, I mean,
You're gonna ask the same, like,
Do you promise not to take your high school student out of school to babysit?
no,
No. I think it will be a problem, but I don't think it's probably a survey question.
well, I think I got what I need. I appreciate you all having open minds to that.
okay.
We've got the quicker moving ones here.
Good.
First,
Doug, get ready.
Anybody have any questions about the UTV gateway?
UTV Gateway.
I think we should approve the bid price as presented by Mr. Powers, because I know it's a definite need and I think it's a good deal. My motion is to approve the bid as presented.
Second,
$20,175.96.
All right, Daryl seconded.
This is through a cooperative purchase.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
Putting that on Friday notes for 3 weeks in a row, I guess.
Yeah.
There we go.
I know what it looks like.
And have it done here.
We met with the Sprint Turf representative today. This document that you all have is updated as of today because we wanted some language added. There's small updates, the price didn't change. And we wanted to make sure certain things were clarified, which they were. Some of those things were making sure that they were going to take care of the batter's box, what am I looking for here?
Dugouts.
Bullpens. the bullpens,
And the tunnel, that hitting cage.
yeah.
Yep.
And, we wanted to make sure that they included the Sourcewell cooperative purchasing number at the top of this because this is not required to go out for bid. The board has a choice to take this as presented without going through the formal bid process, because through that cooperative purchasing. You'll see there's a picture there. This is the rendering of what that field would potentially look like. It looks pretty sharp. It'd be turf all the way through, alternating colors. This is through Sprint turf.
New dugout,
Doug White,
pardon,
Yep.
Doug White,
yes.
Uh,
New dugouts are included in the bid and
That's the big difference here, that the dugouts, the improved dugouts are included in this price. And we wanted to try to have some equity between baseball and softball from a varsity field perspective, and ignoring the dugout probably would have been a bad.
no, they're
choice.
too small, so they needed to be upgraded.
So we got some other numbers there from Mammoth and from AstroTurf, but what you'll see is that those numbers are not as low of a bid. And we have faith in Sprint Turf, and they've given us a list of some of their other projects that they've been working on. They do a fair amount of work in Oklahoma and are doing more and more work in Kansas.
Most recently, they did the fields out at Genesis Complex
Goddard.
near Goddard.
So the recommendation from the district is to proceed with the Sprint Turf product for the high school varsity softball field.
go for it, Doug.
I would like to see the board approve the Sprint turf purchase for installation of artificial turf and the dugouts at the softball field.
For,
Oh, yeah, $591,825.
all right, do we have?
The only other thing I'll point out is that 60% of capital outlay purchases are state aid. That's good news for our taxpayer. And we've also been able to make some dividends off of investments with the high interest rates. So this, you could argue that this turf field isn't costing the taxpayer at all.
I would make that argument then.
There you go.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second? I think Darryl said it first. All right, any discussion? All in favor? Susan,
Oh, I thought.
you are in favor?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right, no, that's good. I was making sure. I was gonna call for a no. All right, 7-0.
Next one is a legislative update. So this is, you all know that, when it comes to specific bills, I'm not bringing those to your attention regularly. So the fact that I'm bringing this to you is because I feel strongly that this bill has the potential to have a real negative impact on Augusta School District and other school districts, but this conversation is about us. Essentially, there's a bill in the House, and it was co-sponsored by our local representative, Representative Williams. So that's why her name is on this, and why we're sending a letter to her and to Senator Larry Allen. But essentially, the bill would do away with the 2-year budget look back. Now, that budget look back has been in place since 2017. And as districts are experiencing declining enrollment like we are, this is like the worst time to implement this when it's already been pre-existing. So the argument there is to just keep it as it is. Prior to 2017, there was a 3-year average, and that went away, and they just kept a 2-year look back. We did run the numbers on the 3-year average. It would have less of an impact, but it would still have an impact of $110,000 to the negative for funds for next year. So the 3-year look back is still not what we're advocating for. I know there are some school districts who are advocating for that as a compromise. We're still coming from the position of, let's just keep this as it is and continue to allow the 2-year look back. For those of you who have looked at our budget projections, you see how the second wave of declining enrollment's coming our way. And if we don't stay aggressive on salaries and the way that we operate over the next year, especially, really 2 years, we're gonna have a really difficult time being competitive. So when you look at $340,000, if that's removed from our operating funds for next year, that's a significant negative impact on salaries or any positions that we might consider adding in the district. So it's just one of those instances where this has such a negative impact on our community that I feel like we need to write a letter. Now, I'm just asking if you all want to sign. I'll pass the paper. You're welcome to sign or not. I'm really not trying to pressure anybody to do that. I'm sending this letter either way. Okay, but because this impacts our school district the way it does, and your board members and you're advocating for our district, I wanted you to know that I'm sending this letter and to have the opportunity to ask questions or even have the opportunity to sign in support if you so
Do you
choose.
have it?
Yeah. And if you have
And we don't
questions,
need to make a motion on any of this.
no,
And we could take it back to the back room with us when we go into executive session back easier. Yeah. If we're gonna actually sign something.
oh, yeah, and that's fine, yeah, just to physically sign it. Any questions or concerns or thoughts that you have about the letter? Because it's, I'm obviously representing the district with this, if you are representing the district.
So no, I was not in favor of sending the last letter just because I didn't understand some of the bills and I just needed a little more time and information to process some of it. But this, I agree with it. It directly impacts our district and in a way, like, we didn't have control over it. It's not because we're, a bad school, or like, we have a great school, we have great teachers, we have great kids. So, we haven't had the economic development as some of our neighboring districts, and we haven't had housing in some of our neighboring districts. And so I am in favor of signing it. I think it's good that we're doing that. So thank you for putting it together.
And we did get our new development going. We've actually started a house,
I saw that.
36 lots.
Yeah.
We have one house going up, so we're not letting anybody move in unless they have kids that go to
Two
school here.
kids at least.
They are, at the back of David Street behind Lake Point. It's called Shadow Ridge.
Jackson.
that divide between both.
Yes, it used to be, it was gonna be an old park at one time. That the developers were gonna put a park in back there, and then there was gonna be some duplexes.
It's a nice little street.
There's not gonna be any difference.
No, this is all houses, single family.
Are they
But then
doing
I was-
duplexes on Custer Lane now?
I was told there was gonna be some duplexes on Custer.
On Custer Lane there are, this is not,
This isn't.
this is not that.
I know very little actually. I might know more tomorrow because Nick had a planning commission meeting.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
take some rooftops.
yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, I'll have it.
That was a large portion of the legislative update, but I did want to point out that I did link the bills that are ongoing right now. And the reason that I did that is twofold. One, to try to keep you informed, and try to put some of those in Friday notes. But if you looked at this, is it 20-page document? Yeah, 29-page, 21-page document. If at any point your eyes crossed, my question is, why is there so much? Why is there such a push to regulate everything from every angle when you all are already elected representatives for school districts? I just don't understand why there's such a barrage, so many bills that are currently being put out to regulate, control, school districts. And it's just coming from every direction. I wanted to point out how, in my opinion, how ridiculous the number of bills that are out there are. And how it just, to me, if I'm a board member, I'm like, what the heck,
That's our
Well,
job.
and they're coming
Yeah.
from so many different committees too. It's not like it's just all education. They're
And it's all over the.
All over.
all over.
So these aren't all gonna come into play. We're not gonna go through them all. I just wanted to point out the sheer amount, right? And just kind of point that out for no other purpose than to point out, but,
It's overwhelming.
it's overwhelming. There's some in here that are concerning, but we'll keep an eye on those as they progress through the session. Really, when you get to April, those are the dangerous ones. Some of these are gonna fall off, or they're gonna you know, get molded into something else. It's a frustrating process for me, honestly, but this is where we're at right now, and I had to update it because when we sent out the agenda to you, I think it was on a Wednesday, by the time, Friday came along, I had to update it because there were so many more added.
She's only on page 9 and she's been scrolling the entire time we've been talking.
And those aren't even the bills. That's not even the language in the bills. That's a summary of the bill. I mean, each bill is probably gonna be 3 pages. So I
In
mean,
legalese even. We
it's
could have an
just,
attorney if we knew one.
it just feels like an onslaught, and I just
It
wonder
is.
why it has to happen every year. But anyways, I'll stop.
Okay,
For Angie's behalf, I would like to recommend the Hilliard Stadium handrail.
Yeah, that was the only one who wasn't officially a part of the Buildings and Grounds recommendation, but it was reviewed by the buildings.
It was.
Okay.
So I move that we accept the
Single bid.
quote from Hutton Construction to $49,214.
Second.
second, all right, any further discussion? All in favor of the handrail? Everybody, all right.
Stadium storage at the Hilliard
Stadium
Stadium.
storage, single bid, stadium storage. This one came in $2,000 over what we had anticipated, so that's not bad.
No.
I'm just gonna point out, this was at one time quoted at $150,000. And the board appropriately said, no, thank
No,
you.
thank you.
So we're looking at $36,190 from a relatively local company with integrity.
Integrity structure. So
I
I'll
would
make a
start.
motion that we do that
Sure.
as Mr. Ward stated.
Second.
All right,
Wait,
who said that?
Amy good.
Second, Amy, okay.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion? All in favor of the shed? Everybody, Daryl, yes, okay.
Next item is transportation come out. Remember, the reason that we looked at going concrete instead of asphalt, which is better because we have large buses and heavy machinery out there, was because oil prices and therefore asphalt prices are up and concrete prices are down. So we were gonna be able to get concrete for $25,000 more than asphalt, which is a really good deal. Turns out that when we ended up getting the concrete for the same price we were quoted the asphalt,
Wow.
it came in $25,000 less than what we had budgeted as buildings and ground. We got 4 bids. The low bid is the recommended bid, which is on-core pavement. They just edged out a local group, Rock Concrete. If you're curious how that works, for us to not accept the low bid, the next available bid, the local bidder would have to be within 1%. And they're not within 1%.
But they're 2%.
They're within 2%, but we looked it up.
I mean,
Looked up
cause
the language.
I did my little calculation as well, 2%.
We double
Do
checked the
Do
language.
we know if they're a good company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
we worked
Okay.
with it.
Okay.
We don't have any concerns about the bidder. So the recommendation is to approve the encore pavement bid for $174,692.
So moved.
Discuss, that does.
Hold on,
the
set the
whole-
second first.
Second,
Okay, go
Um,
ahead.
that does the whole thing, right?
Yeah, that does all the areas that are not currently concrete.
That's great.
And my discussion item is just to clarify, 'cause it's been a hot minute since we talked about it, the 1%, that's a state mandated.
Yeah, we double,
All right,
triple.
perfect.
We did not have any choice in that.
Okay.
When we saw that the local company was that close, we were like, pull up the language, let's read this again.
Yeah.
Appreciate you checking on that, thank you.
Yeah.
Because we would like to
We
do
prefer.
that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we would love to. Okay, any further discussion on that one? All in favor? Everybody, all right. All right, we have some executive sessions. We need a break first.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, so give us a 5 minute, we maybe need a little bit more, since there's more women nowadays, but
Can we
we need a few
can we
minutes.
vote to go
Yeah,
into?
Yeah, we will.
and then designate start time.
Yeah, we will.
Since there's 4, can we just go tink, and just?
No, I think we have to keep coming back out.
Yeah, because we have to.
Yeah, it's different.
Executive session.
It's different reasons. Okay, let's start with the first one, Jim.
Madam President, I move we go into executive session to discuss a matter relating to an individual employee pursuant to the exception relating to non-elected personnel under coma, and to invite Superintendent Ward and Mr. Joe Robb into the session with us. The open meeting will resume in the boardroom in 25 minutes, at
8:45.
8:45.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right.
Where is it? Top?
Make a motion to amend the agenda.
All right,
Yeah.
Madam President, I move that we go into executive session to where's Phil?
To discuss confidential student information, does that work?
Yes,
Pursuant to the exception related to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under coma,
and to
the
invite,
the open meeting will resume in the boardroom
Let's say 9:20.
at 9:20.
We also need to include,
Oh, to include the board, Mr. Ward and, the board attorney.
second, on favor, of Horace. And what about amending the agenda?
I think we probably.
Okay.
Ready?
Okay,
Madam President, I move that we approve the job description regarding the athletic trainer as submitted by Mr. Moore.
okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Everybody? Okay,
Madam President, I move to approve the continuation of Danny Smiley in that position through the remainder of the school year.
okay, a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right,
Madam President, can we go home, please?
yes, we have a second on that one.
Second.
All in favor of getting